Terry, I'm over here.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. And this is the office of David, and his name is David Wu.
Thank you. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, here's a copy of our annual report. You can have one too.
Okay.
And here we have is a copy of the annual report to give us an update on the educational center.
Okay. And I'm going to interview him.
And now Terry is going to interview the director.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. Let me get my tape recorder also, just in case the one may fail.
And this is a very beautiful office. We see there the decorations and the books to tell that he actually is an educator. And also flags, symbols of patriotism to work in Chinatown. Okay, now we'll go to our interview.
Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to visit, and it's pretty impressed that there are 27 classes running, and I guess there's no equal of church doing this, right?
We are one of the larger Chinese churches doing this type of work.
Okay. So may I ask, first question is that when this kind of a social service that initiated by the church?
The church was started. The church is down the street at
Yes.
2301 South Wentworth.
Right.
It's called the Chinese Christian Union Church.
Okay.
It officially started in 1915.
On 1915.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was the efforts of 5 Protestant denominations.
Right.
There's a Baptist group,
Okay.
Presbyterian group.
Okay.
And before the church started,
Mhm.
probably for the 20 years before that,
Okay.
these denominations were sending volunteers
Right.
and workers to come
Right.
into Chinatown to try to share the gospel.
Okay.
And so they tried to teach English, they work with children,
Right.
try to help new immigrants.
Okay.
And so even the roots of the church have trying to serve the community as part of the roots.
Oh, from the
Because-
beginning already.
Because as new immigrants were coming, these denominations were thinking, oh, we send missionaries to China,
Right.
and maybe we can reach these people in Chinatown and try
Okay.
to share the gospel with them, and they could become missionaries in the future.
Right. Right.
And so that was their initial strategy. But the church started as a Cantonese-speaking church. The community was primarily Cantonese-speaking.
Right.
And then probably in the 1950s,
1950s.
started a bilingual service
Okay.
because more and more Chinese were becoming second generation.
So when you say bilingual, it's Cantonese and Mandarin.
Cantonese English.
English. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
And then by early 1960s, they had a separate English service.
Oh, okay.
And then not until the early 1980s did the church start a Mandarin congregation.
Oh, okay.
And that was because in the early 70s, President Nixon normalized the relationship with China.
Okay.
And then after that, more people from other parts of China came.
Okay.
And so still Chinatown is only maybe 10 to 20% Mandarin speaking.
Oh, okay. Okay.
A lot of the new immigrants are Mandarin speaking,
Mandarin speaking already.
maybe 30%, but still because there's a lot of established Cantonese speaking people here, Mandarin
Okay.
is still a small percentage.
Oh, okay.
So throughout the history of the church, the community always was getting new immigrants,
Right.
and so they're always trying to figure out how do we reach out to these new immigrants, because at least the ones from China, probably less than 5% were Christians.
Oh,
And so
okay.
a lot of the new immigrants coming to Chinatown didn't hear the gospel,
Right.
didn't know Christians, didn't attend church in China.
Right.
And so the church wasn't necessarily the place that they would normally go to. So the
Right.
church had to reach outside of the church activities
Oh, okay.
to try to get people to come in. So very early on, they had like English classes. The church has a gymnasium to try to attract the kids. in the 1960s and early 70s, they had a medical clinic,
Mhm.
a volunteer medical clinic once a month.
Oh,
Had
okay.
doctors come, and then tutoring programs for kids.
Okay.
The church bought this building in 1993,
Mhm.
and then, or
1993.
actually early 1993, and then we moved our when the church bought this, they decided that all of the community service work of the church
Right.
would be try to consolidate it and expand it, and they would try to start a community center
Right.
to do more community service work.
Okay.
And so in 1995,
Mhm.
we moved into this building.
Okay.
And started developing the services. So we have programs in a lot of areas. Our largest program is teaching English to new immigrants.
Uh-huh. Yes, sir.
Last year we served over 1,000 students.
Wow.
But not at one time, but usually
Yeah.
maybe 600 to 800 students at one time, but over the
Oh,
course of the
that's a
year,
lot.
about 1,000. Then we have some educational programs for children and youth.
Mhm.
We run a preschool
Mhm.
through third grade.
Mhm.
So we have about 75 students in our school, and then we run some after-school programs and some tutoring programs on Saturdays.
Okay.
We have one staff who just works with new immigrant families, providing counseling, offering workshops, and just any kind of help that she can give to new immigrant families.
Okay.
We also have a computer center
Mhm.
where we teach computers and teach both children and youth and adults how to use computers. We have a music program teaching piano and violin,
Mhm.
and then we also have a bookstore. So
Oh,
that's
okay.
all of the programs that we have right now.
Okay, so these are all the programs and facilities you guys provide for society. Yeah.
Yes.
And so this kind of a service or program are initiated originally for the sake of outreach, right, evangelism.
Yeah.
Okay. But later on run into bigger, getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's later on become more like social work oriented.
Yeah, I think there's still well, the church when it started wanted to kind of use compassion and service,
Right.
and to tie that to evangelism and trying to share the gospel.
Wonderful.
And
Okay.
so still we have that commitment.
Commitment, right.
We're right now we're actually looking to hire an evangelist to work with the students and the families that we work with. One of the big challenges we find are that our church is most effective at reaching a certain group of people. And the new immigrants that don't have very much Christian background
Mm-hmm.
find it hard to merge with the traditional church activities.
Right.
For example, a lot of our English students work in restaurants.
Uh-huh.
And so if you're a restaurant worker, it's
Uh-huh.
difficult for you to work on,
come Sunday.
well, it's difficult or impossible for you to come on Sunday because
Right.
Sunday is the busiest day in the
Yeah.
restaurant. And so the owner of the restaurant will not let their employees
Right.
miss on Sunday. And so a lot of the church structure is kind of organized around people who work during the week and have the weekends off and the evenings
Okay.
off. And so that's been one of the challenges. And so we're hoping to have someone to be able to work with this group of people, maybe doing things maybe not so traditionally,
Yeah.
doing things more early morning before they go to work,
Right.
or late at night when they come home.
Okay.
And then after they become interested or become Christians, to maybe form small groups because they won't be able to attend the Sunday services. And so, yeah, I think as we're growing, we are trying to. We've learned some lessons about how to
Yeah.
reach out, and then how to. Still trying to learn how to best incorporate them and build them up in the gospel.
So two questions for you. By doing such social service for the sake of evangelism, by seeing the growing of bigger and bigger of the social work and social service, did you receive any noise from within the church challenging that the church should be separate from social service, focus on evangelism? And
Yeah, when we first started,
Mhm.
as an the church was committed to providing services. So
Right.
one of the questions was, how do you organize or structure your services?
right.
Many churches have a community service a department in their church.
Right.
They might do tutoring programs, and then the church has a very strong control over that department, or can have
Okay.
a strong control. Um, Chinese Christian Union Church decided to start a separate organization to do the
Oh.
community service.
Okay.
And so, what that allows us to do is to get more resources from outside the community. So we accept government grants and
Oh.
grants from companies and
Right.
people from other churches support our work. But then the concern was that because it was a separate organization, whether or not it would move away from the church's purpose.
Yeah.
All of our board members have to be members of our church,
Okay.
and so there's
Oh.
continued to be a strong connection.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
then,
This is really
and
good.
then we have to coordinate our programs
Right.
in many other ways too, so that we
Okay.
don't drift away. Because I think a lot of there are not very many Chinese churches who have done what we've done,
Mhm.
and so some of them are afraid that we would drift off and become less concerned about spiritual things, more
Right.
like the YMCA.
Yeah.
And so, but I think you could do some things with your organization structure that
Okay.
that ensures that you continue to maintain focus on outreach as well as doing community service work.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole there are a lot of issues involved, because once you that the church early on said that we want to get resources from outside the church.
Right.
And so once you get resources from outside the church, you do lose some control over what you do.
Right.
Like, for example, all of our English classes are
Mhm.
funded by the state government.
Mhm.
And so if it was all funded by offering and church members, then our classes could use the Bible as the textbook for the English classes.
Mhm.
But by accepting government money, you have to be willing to say, okay, we have to be as good at English teachers as possible,
Mhm.
and the teachers have to use opportunities outside of class
Right.
to try to reach out and develop relationships and to share the gospel. And
Oh.
so we don't do the preaching in class, but they have to use the relationships outside of class to do that. And so I think that's one of the. I think if you're going to take government money, you have to.
Some constraint.
There are some constraints, but I guess we are able to live with that
Okay.
because it allows us to reach out to a lot of people that we wouldn't reach out to.
Yes.
Um,
Okay.
And but I think every church has to wrestle with those issues if they're willing to have any control,
Yeah.
or just have to learn to balance different priorities and things like that.
So so far, what's the biggest challenge that you guys have made? The challenge which probably you guys was that time might be very having a headache, which, or you have any challenge that you the time that you see it seems not able to overcome. Have you met this kind of challenge before?
Yeah, I mean, there's always lots of challenges.
Okay.
I mean, the church has been very supportive, and
Mhm.
so financially we've been fairly stable. But I mean, there's always times where your budget gets very tight.
Oh,
And so I
okay.
think financial challenges. I think that's one of the big concerns that a lot of churches would have.
Okay.
The impact of would drain all of our resources.
Okay.
I mean, I think, we are we're still relatively small, but our staff is actually bigger than the church's staff now. So
Okay.
we have 18 full-time staff,
Okay.
and then about 20 part-time people.
Okay.
And so, I mean, just managing that many people is a challenge.
Okay.
And we use a lot of volunteers, and so, I mean, some of the difficult times have been when our staff have personal problems, or if volunteers have situations where,
Right.
like all of our staff and all of our volunteers have to be Christians. And I mean, there's occasionally times when we have to ask volunteers to step down because of things that are going on in their life. And I mean, I think that's always challenging.
Challenge.
I mean, I think that's in ministry, it's hard too, because you have, some of the people that you deal with, or a lot of the people have struggles with sin, and you have to figure out how to work with them
Right.
without pushing them out of the church. So I mean,
Okay.
that's always a struggle, I think, in ministry. That not only are we asking them to serve, but they have to reflect good Christian character,
Right.
and be able to be a good witness to people.
Oh, okay.
So
You're saying that they are not only just doing their job, but they also need to be a model, right?
Yeah.
By life, something like that. Okay. So, as we learned in the past, because we know that the liberal Christians are pretty good in doing social service too. So, from your perspective, how do you, or what can you draw a line between your church doing this kind of social service, because church, you attend is pretty evangelical, and the draw a line between the service the evangelical church now you are doing and the social service done by liberal. Are you know what I mean? Can you draw the line between both type? Do you see any very different value between these two? Even you guys are doing
yeah,
the same thing.
yeah. I mean, I think we are trying to balance. I mean, we're trying to balance kind of the example of Christ,
Right.
and the purpose of Christ. I mean, Christ, when he came, healed the sick, cared for the poor, tried to address some social injustice, but all in the context of coming as the Savior of the world. And so, I think we are trying to keep these two things in balance. I mean, I think liberal Christians would probably take more of the example of Christ and what he did, how he treated people, and raise that up as a priority, and forget about evangelism and kind of the spiritual condition of people. So I don't think it's a different theology, but probably how they balance it. We're trying to maintain the balance, that these are both what Christ did, both of these things,
Right.
and they're both valuable, rather than this is more valuable than the other.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I think generally evangelicals have been more concerned about the individual person. And if you look at our programs, we are trying to help individuals, or we're trying to help families.
Cool.
We've done less addressing kind of societal problems. And I think generally liberals could get more involved in addressing social like community-wide problems, systemic problems, and trying to address injustice at that level. But I think I think one difference is that evangelicals are really very interested in people's salvation, and so if I be a friend to you, if I serve you, care for you, that might bring you closer to accepting Christ at a personal level. I mean, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. And last one. By serving us so far, have you seen any value or any benefit that you guys can gain from serving these people for the sake of evangelism?
I mean, I think there's indirect ways and there's direct ways.
Okay.
Probably over the last 3 or 4 years, maybe about 20 people who've been baptized in our church.
Okay.
First were introduced to Christianity through the Poitak Center. I mean, probably every year we probably hear of maybe 20 or 30 conversions, sometimes more.
Okay.
But really, I think that our focus has been to see how many people would get baptized, because I think presenting the gospel and people accepting the gospel is a big barrier. But I think an even greater barrier is how do you build someone who's an immigrant up in the faith, and eventually how do they get connected to the church? And I think that's the benchmark that we kind of look more towards.
Okay.
Rather than having a lot of evangelistic events and then losing them. And so I think that shows some positive results. I think sometimes I think the church has also benefited because like when the church's visitation groups go out to visit people.
Oh, okay.
I think people connect the center to the church.
Yeah.
So, I think maybe 15, 20 years ago, sometimes the church didn't have that much interaction with the community. So if you lived in the neighborhood, the only interaction that you have is that the church people come and park in front of your house and take your parking space.
Right.
Don't serve or interact positively with the community. So I think hopefully, now that we, especially with the ESL program, I think a lot of people have relatives or friends or neighbors who come to our program, and we have some positive image of the church. And so I mean, there's some very direct and some indirect benefits of the church doing this type of work.
Okay. Wonderful. Shauna, you have anything that you want to say? Okay.
It's clear.
Yeah. On behalf of our class and many of our faculties and students, I really appreciate your interview, and hopefully that by bringing the image of CCUC, what CCUC is doing back into Trinity, we can also stimulate the thinking of students there, the students who are going to be pastors of many evangelical churches.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for your service.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
We just got through with the interview with Mr. David Wu, and they began with the Community College of Chicago because the Community College of Chicago was interested in helping a community, and then but the Community College saw that these people wanted to do services for the community. And then with the services, the government aided and supported this work that is flourishing and impacting the community of Chinatown. And so what one can learn is not to go to the government first, but to begin on your own. And then with your efforts, God will bless and multiply. And this is the lesson that we can learn from our CUCC.
CCUC.
CCUC. CCUC. And this is the logo.
Yeah. 资诚华人基督教会。Good.